a revival of science happen if that same sort of thinking perseveres today? My answer is no. Because you could do it with ancient science, you cannot do it with modern science. And we got to know that there's a big difference between ancient science and modern science. Ancient science was discovering bits and pieces here and there. How does blood circulate? Why do the planets follow that pattern over there? How do you make a water wheel, etc. Nice little good pieces of work. How does light travel through water? Get the law of refraction that way. But you see, there was no thinking at that time. In fact, there could not have been thinking that behind everything would be just a select set of physical laws that could be comprehended by the human mind, that in fact the world was like a giant clockwork machine. That thought came with the clockwork universe of Newton. Much later, much later. Today, science has enormous centrality because science can be used in ways that are very immediate. Science essentially defines our life today. Everything. Communication, medicine. We can't imagine a life like that. On the other hand, that science had very little implication for technology. It was curiosity driven. It was nice to know. It was the precursor of modern science, but modern science is totally different. It envelops us everywhere. Still, you could dispute it. You could dispute my assertion that you need a philosophical change. Well, you could say, all right, there is no grand dispute in Islam today, such as existed between Galileo and Pope Urban VIII. Whether the sun goes around the earth or the earth goes around the sun, those are all issues that have been solved. So there are no major philosophical issues like that. If you're doing usual science, of course, if you're talking about the early universe, the Big Bang, you're talking about neuroscience and the origins of consciousness, whether, in fact, atoms put together appropriately can lead to conscious beings emerging, that sort of thing, yes, that sort of thing then does involve a kind of tension within a religion, or at least brings out those issues that are a source of tension. But look, if you want to build a bridge, or you want to design a piece of software, or you want to isolate a microbe, or you want to do this, that's standard stuff. It does not challenge your way of thinking. It doesn't put the issue of whether there's a grand design behind things or not. It's just normal sort of stuff, you know. So you could make the argument that you do not need a philosophical change because most of science is pretty mundane. But that's wrong. I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong because if one has the mindset of obedience, of accepting things without challenge, if one has the mindset that things have been somehow created from outside, then you can go some way towards becoming an engineer. You can maybe become even a fairly decent engineer. But you can't become a really good scientist. You do not have the mental makeup which is necessary for doing good science. So my assertion is that you can't have science without the scientific method. The scientific method requires you to challenge, to ask, to make hypotheses, to test those hypotheses. If that can be incorporated into religion, fine. But if it cannot be, then you'll only go a little way that way. Maybe you'll get to the 2% level as we've seen, but you can't get much beyond that. And here is where there is, I think, a real problem. Because, you hear exhortations that, oh, Muslims must do science. Yeah, we need to put in more money. Well, they tried putting in a lot of money in Pakistan. It didn't work. The budget for higher education and science increased by a factor of 12. Didn't work. Today, I don't think it's very different from what it was 10 years ago. Or you look at Saudi Arabia. There are labs full of equipment over there. But the scientific method that lies behind it all, that's still anathema over there. If it had been just a question of resources, well, we should certainly be doing okay at mathematics and theoretical physics. Those don't require any equipment. But you see, the kind of training of the mind that you need for mathematics and theoretical physics, you just can't have that unless you have the questioning mind. So now let me come to the question, can it all be turned around? Can Islam and science live together? Actually, you could ask this question of any religion. You could ask whether Christianity is compatible, or Judaism, or this, that, whatever. But I think it's important now to disaggregate the problem. Now I would say that every religion can be split into 4 components. And science would have no problem with the first 3, because they're matters of faith and individual choice. Well, let me make my categorization. I'd say the first is metaphysical. So the metaphysical beliefs relate to the particular beliefs of a religion in matters such as monotheism, polytheism, death, reincarnation, heaven, hell, prophets, holy men, rituals. How many prophets do you want to believe in? 1, 3, 5, 11? That would be one religion. Do you want to believe in rebirth, reincarnation, etc.? So these are what I mean as the metaphysical components of a religion. Then there's the ethical and the moral. So every religion, as we know, has very specific prescriptions of how the adherents of that religion ought to live their life. Can you have 1 wife, 4 wives?